We have been doing this for a very long time, because if you remember in 23, yes, that is when our Western partners, diplomatically, let's say, expressed their deep concern. And in this case, the precedent has already been created a long time ago. And besides, frankly speaking, we are destroying oil refineries with our resources now. So in principle, I don't think that Western partners could have any influence right now. I will repeat once again, in this case, the precedent was created a long time ago, and I think that the political climate is no longer on the side of any restrictions, even regarding strikes carried out by one means or another deep into the Russian Federation. The question here is simply different. It's about whether we have in our possession this or that sort of combat nomenclature. With this, things aren't as perfect as we would like if we speak more globally. That with this we could be helped more effectively, including, let's say, by transferring those same tomahawks, they could solve a lot of things for us.
Alexander, well, there is always, of course, hope, and there will be a series of very important meetings now that could influence this situation with our defense. In particular, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Mikhailo Drapati, stated that in October, for the first time in 8 years, the NATO military committee, led by Admiral Giuseppe Cavodragone, will visit Ukraine. Such a visit by the highest military body of NATO after an 8-year pause is, of course, a strong political gesture. But are these contacts capable of promptly solving the problem of the acute shortage of anti-missiles, which you in particular are talking about before the onset of the autumn-winter period?
I think most likely this will be a more operational situation, yes. That is because when we talk about preparing for the autumn-winter period, and if we are talking about the type of weapon we need for this, and we are talking not only about the line of contact, we are talking about the ability, first of all, to build an anti-ballistic system. It definitely includes, that is, missiles for a preemptive strike. This is so that we could not only intercept those ballistic missiles that are flying towards us, but we could also preemptively destroy those launchers. Well, in this case, I understand that the working meeting, well, it's sort of one of the beginnings.
Yes, but it's always, look, a platform where not always all the topics actually being discussed are voiced. Therefore, there is always the issue of communication, which is important. So, in particular, on August 24th, Ukraine's Independence Day, there will also be a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, chaired by the leaders of Great Britain, France, and of course, Germany. It is known that there have already been discussions earlier, and it was mentioned about possible security guarantees, about the fact that joint exercises are possible. And what exactly should we expect right now from these consultations of the Coalition of the Willing? For Ukraine, for example, again, the issue of closing the skies is acute. Will that be on the agenda, in your opinion?
It will be, but it won't be resolved instantly at one, let's say, meeting or at some gatherings. This is a daily working formula that is being processed, let's say, at a lower level. Yes, that is by working groups, authorized departments, and so on. That is, and at this meeting, well, most likely we will probably reach some, let's say, intermediate result. Why do I think so? Because look, when even something joint is being created, it requires legislative regulation in a number of countries. It requires the allocation of funds. This, again, every government of this or that country must include it in its budget and again pass it through their parliaments. This is a much more complex process than just, let's say, in some kind of summit or in a format of like a coalition of the willing, right? That is, they checked their watches there already, as it were, met, discussed, or with what has already been worked out, compared their databases based on those threats that already exist and that will exist in the future. And on that we are, as it were, moving forward. There's also such a moment here, right? It seems to me that a lot depends on how much we can create corporations, or let's say cooperation, even at the level of private initiatives, because we have manufacturers and developers, and they also exist in Western countries. And here it seems to me that the main thing, besides the political component, is that at the level of one or another countries, well, that is, this program was launched, which will allow for more favorable conditions and more promptly to solve technical tasks that are currently facing not only us, but also the European Union.
Let's talk a little more about closing the Ukrainian sky and anti-ballistic defense, because one can often hear the thesis that countries do not want to share these missiles because they might not have enough themselves. They are thinking about their own defense. Everyone is thinking about their own national interests. But this is the logic of a country that understands that Russian aggression could spread to this country as well. But there are countries that are, let's say, far from the interests of the Russian Federation at the moment and could share these missiles with Ukraine. In your opinion, where can we look to see if there are any stockpiles that could be useful to Ukraine?
I think we need to strengthen our cooperation and communication with South Korea right now, because the technologies and that three-tier system, anti-ballistic air defense system that they have in place, it is in principle worth studying and, let's say, implementing those developments that they already have. They have. And if you notice carefully, the missiles that we are requesting or that we need today, they are already in the final third tier. And the two previous ones, well, the two previous tiers are exactly what I'm talking about. These are ballistic missiles, which are easier to make than interceptor missiles, and which will destroy both preemptively and, in principle, simply on specific targets. We will be able to, we'll have the opportunity to strike. This is for military units, this is for supply bases, and so on. And what we are saying is having intelligence data that is already seeing that this or that launcher is at the launch point, having ballistic missiles specifically for destruction. That is, we could solve more effective tasks than just looking for interceptor missiles. Because if you focus exclusively on interceptors, then naturally such missiles, well, there aren't that many of them in the world, and there will always be a shortage of them.
Look, and now let's look at it from the opposite perspective. If we are talking about Ukraine needing to close its skies because missiles are being launched from the territory of the Russian Federation at our country, then we need to understand that in order for these missiles not to be launched, we can, for example, destroy this launcher in the bud. And here, well, the situation changes. According to the GUR and the American Institute for the Study of War, the Russian Federation is deploying 6 launchers for those very same North Korean ballistic missiles in the Voronezh region. And these are the same KN-23s with a 2.5-ton warhead. And this creates, well, you must agree, very big problems for Ukraine, for 7 regions of our country. The appearance of these missiles with such a heavy warhead for the Ukrainians, what does this indicate? This is a new level of escalation. And should Ukraine consider these launches on the territory of the Russian Federation as essentially legitimate targets, well, before they start?
Of course.
Killing Ukrainians?
Of course. Everything that we should consider, and we do consider everything that is a legitimate military target, everything that has even the slightest connection to the SMO or to their war. Oil refineries, by the way, too. Therefore, naturally, the installations that North Korea has transferred, moreover, and even their officer corps, are a legitimate military target for Ukraine. Why did I, just before your question, recall South Korea? Because this is a threat, including for them as well. Why? Because North Korea, by participating directly now in the war against Ukraine, is honing its skills, its technologies, seeing what they have that isn't working correctly. They are, again, gaining combat experience, right? That is cooperating with the Russian command center. So this is already, well, real practical combat experience. And if this is not stopped now, including with the help of our Korean friends, then in this case, South Korea will be next from the side of North Korea. Here, if you take into account the geopolitical situation, yes, then the United States of America will most likely not have enough strength on one hand to help Japan, and on the other hand to help South Korea. This is a very, by the way, global issue that we can actually help solve in its infancy. But we, again, need the help of our partners, not only from the West, but primarily from South Korea.
But would you agree that such help from North Korea to Putin, that's quite a good signal, isn't it? This is a telling moment about what the Russian Federation actually has in its reserves if they are forced to go to the Pyongyang regime and ask for military aid. How do you see this situation? Do you think Putin's reserves, his storehouses, are empty? Or does he not want to spend them, but is ready to give away the last of the taxpayers' money just to continue the war?
Well, this is, first of all, an attempt to maintain the same level of escalation, and moreover to intensify it. Yes, they have, as it were, found this weak spot in ballistics. That is why they are betting on it. Now, technologically speaking, if you use ballistic missile launchers so intensively, they wear out quickly, and their, let's say, repair or the creation of new ones takes several months. Naturally, to maintain this potential, naturally, Putin has to turn to his partners, to his allies, if you will, right? Let's not forget, Iran is also their ally. Therefore, on one hand, this indicates that the Russian economy really cannot recreate the needs of the military-industrial complex on its own anymore. But on the other hand, they are again demonstrating how they bypass these sanctions and who they are involving their allies, already creating a potential threat for future escalations in other parts of planet Earth.
You see how the situation has turned out. He wanted Kyiv in 3 days, and now he's begging North Korea and Iran for weapons. And he's afraid to announce mobilization because he's afraid of losing his popular support, which isn't there anyway. Thank you very much for this conversation. Oleksandr Antoniuk, serviceman of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, political consultant, was with us on a live broadcast.